Well, good morning, everyone. I know it's 10:08. I apologize for technology can be the worst sometimes, but happy FAFSA season, right? Happy FAFSA season. 22-23 FAFSA is officially open. I've been doing workshops virtually now since 7 a.m. this morning. This is actually going to be my third hour plus long presentation. Maybe it won't be a full hour, but anyways, here we are, and we're always excited for it to be FAFSA season. Annie, just be my person. Just make sure. Are you seeing the full slides right now?
No, we're seeing your notes.
Come on, Jason. Come on, WebEx. You are better. You are better at webinars than this. I mean, how many of you have seen me do webinars? You know I'm better than this. How about we do the stop sharing thing and go share. Screen 2, share. Yeah, here we go. So here's our FAFSA update. The 22-23 FAFSA. Here's some of the resources that Annie just talked to you about earlier. I think she also did this in chat, but folks, this QR code will open up to specifically the FAFSA line-by-line webinars that we will begin next Thursday and throughout October and November leading up to the Thanksgiving holiday. So that's where the QR code will send you. We sent all counselors an email yesterday also with the individual links to share with parents and students, but just FYI, we did get those later up on College for TN. So now you can use the single link to send out to parents if they want to take advantage of our line-by-line webinar. Again, if you're listening this from a recording perspective, as a reminder, we are re-recording the FAFSA videos this year. We had to wait until it launched today, guys. So that's why we haven't made them available earlier this week or last week, because we had to wait until the 2023 FAFSA went live so that we could capture screenshots. And we're going to be working on those videos today, early next week. You know this. We will email all of you when they are made available. I will say, yesterday I took advantage of the Federal Student Aid's FAFSA introduction, the introduction of the new 22-23 form. And one thing that popped out right away, and some of you have seen this already as well, I'm sure, is it was redesigned. The questions, the screens, the rhythm of the FAFSA is the same that you and I that perhaps have memorized the form. It's the same, but the look and feel is a little bit different. I kept hearing them yesterday saying they were bringing it into the 21st century, and they were also making it more mobile friendly as well. That being said, as a reminder, there is that FAFSA mobile app. If students go and search for My Student Aid within the App Store or Google Play for Android devices, that's where they can download the FAFSA mobile app. And for parents and students that want to do this, I would want to do it from a mobile app. I would encourage the downloading of the mobile app. But for the rest of us, this is a screenshot from the desktop version of the 22-23 FAFSA. And if I did have any parents that snuck in this webinar this morning, if you did, welcome. We're glad to have you, because guess what? You're going to hear how to complete the 22-23 FAFSA. But here's what I want to show all of us, practitioners that help students and parents with the FAFSA, parents, students, etc. At the top of every screen, you see outlined the 7 sections of the FAFSA. The first 3 sections, all about the student. Then sections 4 and 5, that's about the parent. And then section 6 reverts back to the student. So it's, to me, crucial that all of us understand that flow of the FAFSA, right? 1, 2, and 3, all about the student. Sections 4 and 5, the parent. Section 6 back to the student. Here's why. How many of you have emailed myself, Annie, or another one of our teammates saying, Jason, Annie, we're working with a student that, I feel might be eligible for need-based aid, but their EFC's in the tens of thousands. What's going on? Right? And Annie and I, we look at our system, or we encourage you to have a student to pull the student aid report. And what sometimes do we see? Oh, the parent entered their income on the parent section, but then also did it for the student section 6, entering as if the student made $75,000 last year, right? That's why it's crucial that you understand the 7 sections in the flow. 1, 2, and 3 student, 4 and 5 parent, 6 is back to student. Before section 7, it's time to sign and submit. The other quick reminder, you're going to hear me say this again later, but the selective service, it's no longer a financial aid requirement for males, but everyone, it's still federal law, right? So in other words, there may be other things that the student has to register selective service in order to access. Honestly, I am not a selective service expert, right? All I knew for years, for 15 years, is why must I coach males? You must register selective service. Well, it's because it's a federal requirement and it's a financial aid requirement. But as of now, today, specifically with the 21-22 academic year, it is no longer a requirement. However, it is still a federal requirement. I'm still going to teach my males that, hey, you need to register, and FAFSA is one way that you can register yourself for selective service. The other thing before we actually go through the walkthrough, just shout out, Annie, I know this makes your heart smile. The first screen, section 4, parent demographics. How many times have we been asked questions about if I'm divorced, if I'm separated, what to do? This initial screen of section 4, parent demographics, will now take the time where a parent can explore, student can explore, well, whose information must I provide? Moreover, if you notice that top dotted arrow, that actually opens that Who is My Parent PDF, which all of you we've shared that with all of you, those of you that have been with us working with us for several years. That will be a resource that we will reshare over the coming weeks and months as we help families navigate the free application for federal student aid. So here we go. You can start out at www.fafsa.gov. This is where you will be taken at this point in time. Students, parents, either start here or click log in. It's going to take you to the same screen, which is this screen. This is the new, quote, login screen, all right, where you identify yourself. Now, y'all, those of you that have listened to me and have been trained by me over the course of years, you know how I approach the FAFSA. The FAFSA is a student application. So, right, if the student has created their username and password, right, then I would always log in with that student's username and password. And thus, I would click I am the student. Now, here's what's new this year. All right, when you click I am the student actually has 3 options. If they have already created their username and password, they'll click log in. If they haven't created their username and password, they can click create an FSC ID. Or, right, they have this option, they can click use personal identifiers, which will then open a screen which will simply ask for their first name, last name, social date of birth. Now, to be clear, I am an advocate of the students to create their username and password first, or right here and log in with their username and password to begin the FAFSA. But notice this new option available by clicking I am the student is they can also use their personal identifiers to begin the FAFSA. Okay? And again, let me be clear, that is okay. If they do that, just understand, well, between then and the end of the FAFSA, when it's asking them to electronically sign, what must they have? They must have created a username and password. Thus, that's why I coach, do the username and password first or in real time, start by clicking create an FAFSA ID. Assuming you've already created your username and password, let's click log in. That will then take you to this screen where you will log in with the student's username, the verified email, or the verified mobile number. Understand the username password creation process will ask the student to verify either an email or a mobile number. If they have elected to do both, then they must verify both. Once those have been verified, they can also be used as the login. So for example, like I have a login, okay? Real life, I have a username and password. My mobile number is verified. So I could enter 615-319-1740 in this top box and then my password and log into FAFSA. Once you've logged in, you get the annual disclaimer, the legalese, right? Click accept to move past, and now it's time to get started. It's time to do the 22-23 FAFSA. You know, as I said earlier, I have just come from doing 2 virtual classroom FAFSA workshops, okay, where they Zoomed me in, and I did this exact presentation with all the students so they could get through the first 3 sections of the FAFSA, where they then could go home tonight or over the weekend, and then all they would have to do is sections 4, 5 with their parents, 6, the student financials before they sign and submit section 7. But that said, one thing that the teacher asked me to do was explain the concept of an academic year. Why are we asking our students to do the 22-23 FAFSA versus the other one that you see on the slide? Well, because if you're beginning college in 22-23, you're wanting to apply for grants and scholarships. For what semesters? That'd be fall 22, spring 23, and possibly summer 23. Well, how do you apply for grants and scholarships? Well, you must complete the 22-23 FAFSA. That's why you got to do the 22-23 FAFSA. 21-22, that's applying for money right now, as if I was in college this semester, next semester, but you're not. You're in high school. That's why you should complete the 22-23 FAFSA. So click that button to begin. The next screen will ask for a save key. Folks, just enter a 4-digit number. You see what I've entered and re-entered here, 1, 2, 3, 4, something as simple as that is all you need to do. Enter a 4-digit number, re-enter it, click continue, and now we're on to the introduction page. Again, parents, students, they can take their time and maybe read through this, but you guys know you're with me. It's time to do the FAFSA. Let's click continue to move past the introduction page. And now we are back in the FAFSA. Now, as we're back in, notice again, top of the screen, you will be able to track your progress, right? FAFSA, think about it, 7 sections, okay? Section 1, student demographics. First screen, if you've entered your username and password, what you will simply be reviewing here is your social, your first name, your last name, and your date of birth. Yes, that social will only display the last 4 digits. As in theory, what you created with your FAFSA ID should, if you created a while back, have already been authenticated, okay? Now, for my students that are doing this in real time, yes, if you create your username and password in real time and then go in to start the FAFSA, you'll be able to use your username and password right away as well. But understand you're only going to see the last 4 digits. So hopefully you entered it correctly when creating your FAFSA ID. Don't worry, if you didn't, you will get the friendly email from FAFSA saying there's a problem, all right? So once you've reviewed this, click continue. Next, this is where you will enter an email address and your phone number, all right? You know what I say for my counselors, my educators that are listening to me, from an email perspective, most of those high school email accounts, they expire once the student graduates. So what should we encourage the student to do? Not only for FAFSA, but for Promise, but for college applications, it is to me, use a personal email. If you don't have one, go to Google and create a free Gmail account. Once you've entered the email and phone number, click continue. In this screen, this is about their mailing address. In this case, this information should be pre-populated. Review. If it's right, click continue, move on. Have you lived in Tennessee for at least 5 years? Yes or no? If you have, if you're a lifelong Tennessean, the answer is yes. Next question, are you a U.S. citizen? If you are, yes, and click continue and move on to the next screen. I'm going to pause. We're going to look at this screen from two other perspectives, so bear with me. First, what if you're working with a student that just recently moved to Tennessee within the last 5 years? Well, here is that flow of questions. Have you lived in Tennessee for 5 years? No. What is your state of residence? Well, if you live in Tennessee, that should reflect Tennessee. I don't know why FAFSA does this, but then it re-asks, did you become a legal resident before January 1st, 2017? Again, if I moved here after that date, or in 18, 19, 20, or last month, the answer would be no to that third question, which would then prompt the when did you become a resident? That's where you need to enter the month and year you moved to Tennessee. So if I moved in July of 2020, the parent, the student here on the student section 1 of the FAFSA would enter 072020 and move on. Let's tackle that other question. Are you a U.S. citizen? As many of you know, to qualify for federal and state aid, you must either be a citizen or an eligible non-citizen, which means a permanent resident, a green card holder, or a student that has an I-94 arrival departure record that's designated by certain designations like refugee. Guys, that is a PDF that we send out every year during FAFSA season. We will be sending it out again that outlines what it means to be an eligible non-citizen. But that said, assuming a student might be, and when they're asked, are you a citizen, they'll select no, comma, but I am an eligible non-citizen. That will prompt for their alien registration number. This is the USCIS number that can be found on their green card. Once that's entered, click continue. And now we get into the student education screen. We're going to tackle this one question at a time because this is where we find the bulk of mistakes that students make. First, what will your high school completion status be when you begin college in 22-23? My assumption, if I'm graduating in May, I will have my high school diploma. Next, what college degree or certificate will you be working on when you begin 22-23? Now, counselors, y'all know the different types of degrees, right? If I go to community college, I'm pursuing an associate's. If I'm going to Vandy, UT, Austin P, MTSU, University of Memphis, Rhodes, Sewanee, I'm pursuing a bachelor's degree. If I'm going to TCAT Hohenwald, TCAT New Bern, TCAT Nashville, then I'm pursuing a certificate diploma. But here's what I did this morning, and here's what I would do back when I was able to do in-person workshops. If I was able to lead kind of line by line in a computer lab setting, I would just have all of my students select first bachelor. Why? Because when you do, that pre-populates that next question. Will you have your bachelor's degree before you begin the 22-23 school year? It will pre-populate no if you select first bachelor's on the previous. Folks, that is a trick that I use leading FAFSA workshops. Can the students select associate's degree? Yes. Can they select certificate diploma? Yes. But what's make or break about this question, assuming you can see my mouse cursor, is what some students will select is college graduate professional degree. All right. That will make them ineligible for financial aid if they select college graduate professional degree. You know, or I've seen students select second bachelor's degree, right? And so instead of explaining all of these, I just like to say select first bachelor's. That defaults this next question. So let's move on to the fourth question. What will your college grade level be? The answer is all my high school seniors never attended college first year. Does not matter how much AP, IB, dual enrollment, CLEP, whatever college credit you've amassed while in high school, doesn't matter. If you're a high school senior, you need to select never attend it first year. And then finally, are you interested in being considered for work study? To me, the answer is yes. The answer is always yes. This is where you can work on a college campus, get a paycheck. If you say anything other than yes, you're not going to have this as an option. Click continue, next screen. We've already hit this earlier. This will be the gender screen. Are you male or female? If you're female, you'll click continue and move on. If you're male, that's what will prompt the are you registered with Selective Service, yes or no. If you say no, then FAFSA will present you the option for FAFSA to register you. As I said earlier, it's still, even though it's not a financial aid requirement any longer, it is still a federal law. I would encourage my male students to select yes for FAFSA to register them. They always have the option to go online to selectiveservice.gov and do this as well. Driver's license. So in Tennessee, many of you know this. If you don't, I may be teaching you something. Whether you have a license, a driver's permit, or a state issued ID, those three forms of identification will all carry the same number. So, because some colleges in Tennessee use this information to determine eligibility for in-state tuition, if a student has either state issued ID, a permit, or a driver's license, they should take the time, enter the number, select Tennessee, and click continue. If they don't have a form of identification, they can just click continue to skip these two questions. Are you a foster youth, or were you in foster care at any time? Yes or no? I mean, obviously, this will impact a handful of students, right? But not all of our students, so yes or no. The other two questions, we actually, to my knowledge, at least at the state level, we do not use what's the highest level of education by parent one or parent two. Some states use this to determine first generation scholarship eligibility. Again, I am unaware of any school in Tennessee that does that. So again, these are pretty simple questions. I'll use my mom and dad as an example. You know, both graduated from high school and that was it. Neither went to college. So for mom and dad, I would put high school in high school. If someone does not know, again, these two questions are skippable, or they could answer for one and then select other unknown for the other. And everyone, look, demographics, check, we're done. So we are past section 1 of the FAFSA. Section 2, school selection. First, this is where the student needs to add their high school, right? Sometimes less is more. Definitely select the state, select Tennessee. But then what I would do is I would either select the city or leave that blank and enter the first word of the high school name. So for example, Springfield, click search, and then any high schools that match those parameters will appear. So for example, if I'm a Springfield High School student, I will now select that radio button and click continue. Now, one thing I've noticed this year is, notice this, I can't find my school. And I don't know if any of my friends from Green Hill High School are on, but you know, last year we saw that with them. Actually, I don't know if my friend Kelly Hogan might be on from JP2, but JP2, she just emailed me, Annie, right as I was transitioning from my classroom presentation over to the statewide webinar. And she's like, Jason, we've actually changed our high school name to something. And forgive me, I don't know what JP2 is now called, but it's called something Pope Prep or something like that. And she was asking, how can it be updated on the FAFSA? Folks, if you are a counselor at a brand new high school, and I think West Ridge would be a great example over in Sullivan County. Guys, I don't know West Ridge. I doubt it will be on this FAFSA. I'll reach out to my federal contact. I think what ultimately happens is it will ultimately work with the Department of Education to share any new high schools here in Tennessee. And then we will see that school populate on the 23-24 FAFSA. But generally speaking, what I've had students do in the past, if their high school is not on, is essentially just type like for West Ridge, go back to the screen, select Tennessee, and if West Ridge, forgive me, I don't know if it's in Kingsport or Bluntbull, I apologize, but whatever the city's in, select it and then type out West Ridge High School and select search. Let's see what happens, because in the past you were able to just click confirm and move on past this high school slide. Once you are able to confirm it, here it is. My example, Springfield High School in Springfield, Tennessee. Looks good to me. Click continue. Let's move on. Now it's time to begin searching the colleges that you want your FAFSA to be sent to. Many of you know what I coach and teach you. I would encourage my students to enter any college that they have applied to or will be applying to in the next week or two. All right, that's what I would have my students do. Okay, as many of you know, you can add up to 10 colleges at one time. That does not mean you necessarily have to add 10 colleges. Again, I would stick with the philosophy, add those schools that you have applied to or will be applying to soon. As a reminder, you submit this FAFSA today, this weekend, next week, next month. You can always go back after the fact to add more schools once the FAFSA has been processed. So similar to the high school search, less is more. Let's identify first what state is the college located in. If it's in Tennessee, select Tennessee. If you know the city, I would just enter the city and click search, and then you can check the college that pops up. Okay. Now on the other hand, you could do what we did on the previous for high school. You could leave city blank and just put the first word or two within the college name. So for example, let's say you're interested in East Tennessee State University. You could type in for school name, East Tennessee, click search, and then you would simply check East Tennessee from the box that moves up. A question I received earlier this morning, and I know this is statewide, so this is applicable to not only folks in Middle Tennessee, but East Tennessee as well. South College. Listen, if someone here in Nashville were to select Tennessee and Nashville and hit search, South College will not pop up. Why? Because South College, its main campus is in Knoxville. So to add South College onto the FAFSA, you would have to either select Tennessee and search by school name South, or search Tennessee and enter Knoxville, because the South College Knoxville does account for the Nashville location as well. That also applies to some of our community colleges. Now there's people that were to Columbia State that once that campus down in Franklin opened, there's a lot of students that just think the only Columbia State there is the one in Williamson County in Franklin. So when they go, let's say they go Tennessee and search Franklin, well, guess what? Nothing comes up for Columbia State. Why? Because its main campus is in Columbia. So guys, understand sometimes less is more when you're teaching a student. So it might be best to search state and then just a partial school name to search and then select from the list. Now, this is just one example. If they want to go and add more, now how this screen is built is you will simply scroll back up and you will just repeat that process until you have added the schools you want. Once you're done, you'll click continue, and you will have to select the housing plan for each school. Guys, you are not bound by the housing plan that's selected, but you must select a housing plan to move forward. Once your housing plans have been selected for any and all schools listed, click continue. And we are now past the first two sections of the FAFSA. Now, dependency status. As many of you know, working with 16, 17, 18-year-olds, generally speaking, until they reach the age of 24, they will be dependent, meaning they will need to provide their parents' information on the FAFSA. But the dependency questions over the next 4 screens will determine that status, dependent or independent. Because, right, you and I, we do work with some independent students. So first, student, what is your marital status? Well, you're a high school senior. I'm going to assume most of you are single, so let's click continue and move on. Student, do you have children? Student, do you have dependents that you financially support, right? Again, working with traditional 16, 17, 18-year-olds, they're going to answer no to both of these questions. We're going to move on. And then this is the screen that we always like to take the time to explain, not only to you as professionals, but also to our families. These 5 questions, if none of them apply, you will check none of the above, but let's go through them. First, student, are you currently on active duty in the armed forces? If you are, you can check that box. Student, are you a veteran of the armed forces? Again, if I were to be helping a student that is, then they could check that box. And I'm saying a student that most likely would be 19, 20, 25, 30, etc. For the high school age specifically though, student, at any time since you turned age 13, were both parents deceased, or were you in foster care, or were you a dependent or ward of the court? Folks, some of our students will be able to check that box, right? If they were in foster care at any time at age 13, 14, 15, 16, or 17, whether that was 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, or if there still are, right? That's at any time. That's the key to that question. At any time since you turned 13. So if that's applicable, they can check that box. Next, as determined by a court in Tennessee, are you or were you an emancipated minor? Educators, I'd love for you to use chat to let me know, is that even possible for a high school student? I don't know. I mean, y'all know this. I've been doing this 16 years. I've actually never encountered anyone that's been emancipated. I know back in the day when I first learned FAFSA, I asked some folks, I think I actually asked a lawyer, and I was told that emancipation was not even a thing in Tennessee. But again, that was many, many, many years ago. I'd love any feedback in the chat if you can, steer us with some clarity there. But anyways, next final question: does someone other than a parent or step-parent have legal guardianship of you, specifically as determined by a court in Tennessee? So guys, this is where we think about grandparents, aunts, and uncles first, right? We do have our young people, some that do live with grandparents, aunts, uncles, and other relatives. The key there is, if I'm helping a student with the FAFSA, with a grandparent at his or her side, all right, Granny, do you have legal guardianship of this student per court? Granddad, do you have a legal guardianship of the student per a court? If they say they do, I take them at their word and say, all right, you can check that box. That will make you independent. It means that only the student's information will be needed on the FAFSA. But counselors, as you navigate this with students, here's the key. The College Financial Aid Office most likely will ask for a copy of that decision at some point in the spring and prior to enrollment in the fall. And understand they're going to have to provide that documentation to the College Financial Aid Office, which is probably not an issue, but here's the key. That documentation must read legal guardianship. If it reads anything else, temporary or legal custody, that's not the same as legal guardianship. A financial aid office is looking for a court document that specifically says, granddaddy and nanny of Jason C has legal guardianship of Jason C. That's what it's looking for. And just always gives these families a heads up. As long as you can provide that, you're going to be good. However, if you're unable, then the college may ask more questions and ultimately may ask you to amend your FAFSA. If none of these apply, then check none of the, click continue. And now we have arrived at the final dependency question. On or after July 1, were you homeless or at risk of being homeless? Yes or no? Yeah, Cameron, no, and I see your chat. Cameron, I have. I mean, they're out there. There are, and Cameron indicated that she's never seen a document that reads guardianship. And I'm not, this is not me. Cameron knows me, and y'all know me for the most part. I'm not being ugly when I say, yeah, they're out there. They are. I mean, I have seen court documents say that. But to Cameron's point, The majority of the ones that I see do say legal custody. And folks, that's not the same as legal guardianship. So for those, if you are working with a student that indicates legal custody, at that point in time, then the frame of mind should be, okay, is mom or dad still in this person's life, right? And can we potentially use this? Or I'm going to now point to this screen, for Cameron and for others that are chatting in, if that document says legal custody, and if there is no contact with mom and dad, right? This is a rhetorical question. Per McKinney-Vento, can you, the school district, deem this student homeless, self-supporting, at risk, or remember, this question also encompasses unaccompanied youth. So can you do that if a student lives with their grandparent or an aunt and uncle? If you can, then, and you can make this student classified homeless per McKinney-Vento, right? Now we got another path to independence on this screen, right? But if not, then the student would be looking at submitting a special circumstance to submit the FAFSA, and then ultimately following up with their college at that point in time. So assuming they answer no to all these questions, this will make them dependent, which now asks the question about, are you able to provide your parent information? This is also where you begin the special circumstance if they're unable to provide parent information, right? But that, again, I can answer questions about special circumstance. My thought in my mind, y'all know the rhythm of these trainings is oftentimes that's a FAFSA 201 presentation that I like to cover, a couple of weeks from now, right? We haven't scheduled anything yet, but again, feel free to ask any questions that you have today. But I'm taking the approach that, hey, we are working with the dependent students that is able to provide parent information. So we have completed the first three sections. Now we are on the parent demographic section, section 4 of the FAFSA. This is Annie Trout's new favorite screen. I think it'll be our favorite screen, you and I as professionals, especially for, but I honestly wonder that will this screen, if a parent actually takes the time to read, and actually if they click the little down arrows, it's not a ton of information in terms of that they're going to have to read a lot, but I think it may make your and my job simpler, where we may get actually less of these questions if they just take the time and read this screen before clicking continue to move on. So the first question after that initial screen is, well, what's your marital status? So counselors, I presented when we do the family webinars beginning next Thursday, and we're doing this exact same presentation. This is how I present it. Student, if you live with two parents, mom, dad, mom, stepdad, dad, stepmom, then you're going to select married or remarried and move on, because your FAFSA will need both of those parents' information. Again, mom, dad, dad, stepmom, mom, stepdad, right? Pretty simple. On the other hand, if you're in a single parent household, then you're looking at either never married, divorced or separated, or widow, right? So if you're in a single parent household, that's what you're looking at. Now, the other option, the unmarried but both parents living together, guys, I'm seeing that more and more, where I've been asked, Jason, I have a student who lives with both parents, but they're not married. What do they do? Well, guess what? There's a selection for that. It is unmarried and both legal parents live together. So they'll answer accordingly. And then thereafter, especially if they're married, divorced, or widowed, they will be prompted for the month and year whenever that event occurred. In this case, my parents are married, and they got married September of '99, so you will enter 09 of 1999. Now FAFSA, from a two-parent perspective, will ask for the parent's social, last name, first letter of the first name, date of birth, and email. Two-parent household, the next screen will ask the same. The only thing I will say on this slide is for those of us who work with parents that don't have socials, this is where they will enter all zeros for their social security number, right? All nine, or all zeros. So 9 zeros, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Again, if your parent does not have a social security number, this is where they will enter all zeros on the screen. After you enter your parent or parents' information, now the question, have they lived in Tennessee for 5 years? Just like we went over before, yes or no? If yes, click continue. If no, same flow here. They live in Tennessee, that is their state of residence. If they did not move here prior to January 1 of 17, they'll say no. And then that next question that comes up, they will enter the month and year that they moved to Tennessee. So July 2020, I will enter 07. The household size screen, this has changed this year, guys. So notice that underneath enter information for your parent dependents, notice this blue bar says, do not include yourself, the student. So from a parent perspective, first question, how many other dependent children do your parents have? So, brothers and sisters, right? If I have a brother and sister, right, that are younger than me, then I'm going to put 2 right here in this box. Or if I have 2 sisters, one younger, one older, the older one's in college, but my mom and dad still supporting that person, I'm going to count 2 there, right? Next question. How many other dependents do my parents have? So if the parents are taking care of a niece, a nephew, a cousin, or elderly parent that are in your parents' household, that they are financially supporting, that's where those individuals can be accounted for. If there's none, then you'll put 0, click continue. On the next screen, I like this. I think this is pretty straightforward. Based on that previous screen, in screens, your household size is 5. That accounts for you, the student, mom and dad, and that brother and sister that you have, right? 1 + 2 + 2 = 5. I think thinking about this from someone that hasn't done the FAFSA, if they see this, if that your household size number is incorrect, then that should prompt them to hit previous to re-look at the previous 2 questions they addressed. Now, of the dependents, right, in this case, of the 3, that would be me and my brother and sister, right? How many will be in college next fall? In my case, I'm going to say just 1. Obviously, if myself and my brother will be in college next fall, then you'll put 2, etc., etc. Here's the key. Do not include your parents in the number in college. We have navigated section 4. Section 5, now we get into parent financials. For 2020, that's what this 22-23 FAFSA is based on. Not now, not 2021, but what we did in 2020. Have your parents completed their tax return? 3 options, okay? Already completed, for those of us that filed taxes, that's what we'll select. We'll file, for those of us who filed an extension and may be filing this month, that's what we'll file. That's what we will select. And then not going to file. If you're working with parents who are unemployed in 2020, disabled, right? That's what they're going to select, not going to file. Assuming, in this case, we're working with families that filed their taxes. The next question, what type of income tax return? Well, guys, now there are other options, but from an American perspective, all of us now just file a Form 1040. I think the other options are a foreign tax return. You know, I have encountered that with a few families I've worked with, but for the most part, it's now IRS Form 1040, and move on to the third question, which is the tax filing status. Again, however, the tax filing status is on that 2020 tax return. That's what should be selected here to move on. If the parent is eligible to use the data retrieval tool, this is when they will receive this option. Yes, we not only recommend, as you see on the slide, If you're eligible, use data retrieval. Let's proceed to the IRS. This is where for the first time, the parent is asked for their username and password. All right, so understand, if parents get to this part and assuming they have a social, because again, someone that does not have a social that enters all zeros, they'll have to manually enter their stuff. But for a parent that gets to this slide and, oh shoot, I haven't created my username and password yet. Notice there's a create an FSC ID link that can allow them to create it right here in real time. Once they create it, they will enter the username, their password, they'll click continue. That will take them through to their IRS site. They'll click OK. They'll review their information, enter the address exactly as it appears on the 2020 tax forms, and then hopefully they will get this screen that indicates IRS found their tax information. They'll check this box, click transfer now, and that will transfer most of their tax information onto the FAFSA. I'm just going to show you from a manual perspective because I understand, like this adjusted gross income question, if they use data retrieval, this will say transfer from the IRS. They will not see the number transfer. But for those that have to manually enter, heads up, above each blank, it will tell you where to look on the tax return. In this case, for AGI, you would look at line 11 on the 1040, enter the number there. Married parents. These are the two questions that will not be transferred from the data retrieval tool. Where I have a mom and a dad, this is where those parents will have to use their individual W-2s to manually enter specifically what did dad make versus what did mom make, okay? Now, again, traditionally, we have W-2s, right? But for parents who are self-employed, then they would look at their Schedule 1, lines 3 plus 6, as you see in the instruction. For rare occasions, and that was rarer, R-A-R-E-R, I do work with some families that file a K-1, and so any income that a mom or dad made could also be found on box 14, code A. Here's my one issue with the screen in the instructions. Right above each field, this amount for parent 1 is their portion of IRS form 1040 line 1. Well, all right, that is technically accurate. It's their portion. Well, but how do you find out that portion? Well, you have to look at a W-2. So that's why I just say look at a W-2, okay? Next screen, income tax. Again, this is going to be transferred, but for those that have to manually enter, they will look at line 22 on the tax return. It does say minus Schedule 2, line 2. Most Tennesseans don't file a Schedule 2. If I'm not mistaken, that's still used to file for an alternate energy credit, which again, most Tennesseans don't file. So generally speaking, you're just saying, look at line 22 and enter that amount. And from here, guys, we could go through each of these questions, but basically this is review the question, parent. If it applies, answer. If it doesn't, leave it as 0. And then once all have been reviewed, click continue. Same for this, right? Review. If one applies, answer. If not, click continue, move on. Same thing for the untaxed income section. Review. If any apply, answer. If not, enter 0, click continue, let's move on. Then we get to the parent asset screen, at least some will, where the parent will be asked, do your current assets exceed a certain dollar amount? I didn't. I thought I did. Remember, assets, they can click assets for a complete definition of that term. Moreover, they can click the question marks if they want to know specifically about a specific investment. Bottom line, it's anything in the bank. What assets are not it's not your home, it's not your cars, it's not your boats, it's not your 401k, it's not your 403b, it's not your SEP retirement account. It's not an IRA. So your retirement money is typically protected and excluded from the FAFSA definition of an asset. It's typically those CDs, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, money market accounts, cash checking savings, those type things. Okay. So again, yes or no. If yes, then they'll answer these three questions. If no, then they'll move on to section 6. I just want to show this. You guys, I know it's 10:59. Y'all know if you've got to get off for another meeting, you know this is being recorded. You'll be able to hear the last 5 to 10 minutes later after Annie sends out the recording next week, or when the team sends out the recording next week. But that being said, there are some income triggers. So for example, if the parent's adjusted gross income is less than $49,999, then they're going to see this screen, okay, which asks, did the parent file a Schedule 1, yes or no? And again, Schedule 1s typically are filed to claim for parents that are self-employed. So again, yes or no question. And then if you do answer yes, maybe because mom or dad is self-employed, the next question will come up with, as of day, is your parent, your mom, your dad, or your parents dislocated workers? Essentially, folks, this means that you've been laid off, okay? Again, yes or no question. If you answer no, then you will also be asked, did you, the student, mom, dad, or anyone within your household, back to that household size, receive any of the following benefits? So Medicaid, SSI, food stamps, that's SNAP, free and reduced lunch, etc. If any of this applies for anyone in the household, you'll check the box, or you'll check none of the above and click continue. Now, for some, depending on their answers, you may be asked to skip your remaining questions. If FAFSA ever asks you to skip questions, yes, you do. Select yes, click continue, and skip. Same thing for assets. If you're ever posed this question, do you want to skip questions about your mom's assets? Yes, you do. Click continue to move on. Let's quickly go through this section 6 about the student financials. It's just like what we just went through. So we should be able to expedite this a little bit. Student, for 2020, did you file taxes? So if they did, they'll click already completed. But for those that didn't, because they didn't work or they didn't make enough to file, they'll select not going to file, which generally is the majority of seniors we work with. They'll click continue because if they didn't file, there's no need to use the data retrieval tool. But again, if the student did file taxes, then they'll use the data retrieval tool. How much did you earn from work? So even if you select not going to file, you still will be asked, how much did you earn from work? So again, if you received a W-2 from Chick-fil-A, from GameStop, from Walmart, right? You'll use that W-2 to answer this question from 2020. And then it's review. If these apply, for most seniors, they won't apply. They'll enter 0, click continue, move on. Same thing, again, for most high school seniors, none of these questions apply. Enter 0, click continue, move on. And then student assets, all right? Student assets. If they're asked to skip, yes, they'll skip. If they're asked to report, most likely the third one's going to be 0 because most high school seniors do not have a current business that has more than 100 employees. In terms of cash checking, savings, and investments, this is where I always say, you know, for the typical student, if they have a small account with $200, $500, I typically coach just 0 out the assets and move on. You know, unless you've got something of consequence, like if the student has, you know, I was going to say a savings account. Annie, Felicia, help me. What's my special savings accounts that some students have? And I'm not talking about 529s. I'm talking about any counselor, help me out. What's that special? Oh, UTMA, UGMA. Sorry, guys. If a student has an UTMA savings account or an UGMA savings account, that is a student asset. And I've seen some of those that may have quite a bit of money in them. And, you know, if you've got thousands, tens of thousands of dollars, well, guess what? That is considered an investment. So forgive me, guys, that is the savings account I was. Here's the version of if the student's prompted to skip those assets. And finally, we're at section 7. This is the summary. The student, the parent will review all the information top to bottom. If everything looks right, they will click continue to move on. This is the new signature process. Annie, I'm going to pause. Well, hold on. You just closed your video. Did you need to say something?
Well, I had a question. What if the student has a trust?
Can we research that answer for that parent or counselor and get back? This is where the trust is an asset. However, FAFSA says there are some assets that we can attribute to the parent. There are some that we can attribute to the student. Annie, I just want to make sure that we answer the question correctly and we attribute it to the right person. Annie, let me say what I'm saying here. But for example, guys, if a student has a 529 college savings account in his or her name, that should be attributed to the parent asset. Okay? That's kind of one of those caveats on the FAFSA. If the student has a 529 in his or her name, that is attributed to as a parent asset. Now, if a grandparent owns the 529, then it's not reported at all on the FAFSA until subsequent years when, say, the grandparent disperses a certain amount from that 529, that will be reported in a certain question on the FAFSA. But right there, like I said, with trust, I want to make sure we report that accurately. So Annie, get that person's contact information so that we can research and be sure, since I don't have the guide right in front of me right this second, nor is my, perhaps, guys, this is day 1 of FAFSA season. When you get to me on day 30 of FAFSA season, I'll know that answer. Sometimes I forget that answer about trust. So, new signature process, folks. So once you click continue here, the student right away will basically go through the agreement that basically reads the best of their knowledge. This information is accurate. They'll check the box, click continue. This is where they will sign this form. If they need to re-enter their username and password, this is where the student will do it. Click sign this form. Now it's time for the parent to do the exact same thing. The parent will click provide parent signature. They will also agree to the best of their knowledge this information is accurate. They'll check the box. They'll click continue. This is where the parent will also re-enter their username and password and click sign. And notice here, it's sign and submit. So if both username and passwords are lock and loaded, when the parent signs and clicks sign and submit, this FAFSA will go straight to the confirmation page. That said, for my parents that we serve that do not have social, they'll click this other options to sign and submit button. This will present the print signature page. They will click that circle. They will then click print signature page, which will physically print a signature page that the parent will sign, date, and mail off to FAFSA. Guys, the address is on the signature page where that must be mailed, but that is what must be done for our parents that do not have Social Security numbers. Once they've done in terms of if you go that route where they have to print a signature page, then last step is the student would have to click submit my FAFSA now. Congratulations, Jane, you have submitted your 22-23 FAFSA. You know, this will let them know that the FAFSA, 7 to 10 business days, it will be processed and that they will receive their student aid report. Guys, if they entered an email, that student aid report will be electronically emailed to them. The only student aid reports that are mailed are those that the email is left blank within the student demographic section of the FAFSA. The other big item of import on the confirmation page is the expected family contribution. That's that number that colleges use to determine eligibility for programs like the Pell Grant and for here in Tennessee, the Tennessee Student Assistance Award. For TSEA, it's 0 to 4,500. For Pell Grant purposes, it's a little over 5,600 is the Pell Grant cutoff, but that's what that EFC is, and that's what that number will, be used by the college to determine is eligibility for grants like Pell and TSEA. EFCs can range all the way up to 999,999. Obviously, Jane in this case would not be a Pell Grant eligible student. And folks, I'm going to say that the first 9 minutes was on me because of the technology or WebEx issue I was having. If not, we would be done right at 11 o'clock. So I apologize that it's 11:09. Guys, any questions that I need to verbally respond to? Please do some Q&A. So Jade, I will verbally respond. It looks like these have been answered as well. Jade's still with us. So if a grandparent has legal guardianship, if they have court documents that say and read legal guardianship, then yes, the student will file independently on the FAFSA. If they have custody, then to me, it goes into the school district. Based on the situation, is this student considered homeless or unaccompanied? If not, then the student would have to submit their FAFSA with a special circumstance and then follow with the college about potentially a dependency override and navigate that process with their prospective college. Yeah, there's that. Shayna, what did you just say? Shayna, this was exciting news that I learned yesterday. So per federal student AIDS webinar yesterday, the correction, so for those students that we have to work and do a FAFSA correction for the first time, it's going to match what you just saw, okay? So yeah, Shayna, I agree. Now, Shayna, you know as well as I do, if we start correcting something on November the whatever, and it looks otherwise, well, that's what they told me yesterday. So I'm just sharing with you what they told me yesterday. How about that? But yes, the correction should now look like what you just saw me go through looks like. Melissa, I appreciate that comment. And your comments, I should say. Good. Anything else, Annie? And Felicia, I know you jumped on as well. Anything else you think we need to cover? Cameron, thank you. A reminder, in case you did join late, Casey, I'll get to that in a second. If you joined late, the team emailed out yesterday about the FAFSA line-by-line webinars for parents and students that begin next Thursday and every Thursday thereafter, leading up to Thanksgiving. Those are going to be at 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern. Annie will do some, Felicia will do some. I think I'm going to do none, maybe. I don't know, we'll see. But just FYI about the line-by-line webinars. The other thing, right, and to my two directors of college access here, I think all of us have been fielding questions, at times from counselors of, what else are y'all doing? Are y'all doing in-person workshops? Folks, understand, from our leadership, we have let each outreach person make that decision. So, in my case, I'm remote because I am in an immunocompromised home, and my wife's doctor has said, Jason, until further notice, you need to work from home. So unfortunately, guys, I have to be in this setting, but for everyone else, I'm going to refer to them. Annie, Felicia, you don't have to speak on that unless you want to today, but seriously, reach out to your outreach specialist and ask what's available. If you want to schedule a workshop, whether it can be done virtually, because it can, or whether it's in person. Guys, Casey asked, do you know the email address that sends the SAR to the student? I would like to be on the lookout. So Casey, it's whatever email the student has listed within the student demographics section of the FAFSA. So if I'm not mistaken, that is screen 2. So right, like right after you review social, first name, last name, date of birth, that next screen that asks student email, re-enter email, whatever email is communicated there, that's where that SAR is going to. Okay, so
Yeah, I think it'll come from federal student aid.
oh, Casey, I'm sorry. Thank you, Annie.
I'm not sure if they have like a separate fancy email that's federal student aid, something, 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 but it should come from federal student aid.
Yeah, Casey, sorry about that. It should. I mean, it should. Like if I was like being right, Felicia, Annie, you 3 of us being blind right now in terms of this question, I would just say, student, look for FAFSA, federal student aid, confirmation page, student aid report. You know, those are the buzzwords, right? I mean, that's what's going to be emailed. That's what I would be looking for as the subject, not the. Cameron. So if you mark the student as legal guardianship, but as actual custody, will that get the ball rolling for dependency override at the college? Well, again, most likely the college is going to ask for the court document. So when the student gives them that and they say legal custody, then that college will follow back up with the student to ask other questions. And whether that does lead into the dependency override process or based on what the student says to the college, right? You know, it could go down one or two paths, whether it is the dependency override or it could be the, you know, like some of these I see, well, grandparent has custody, but mom's still in the picture. Well, guess what? If that's the case, mom needs to do FAFSA. You know, that's something that if you present that scenario to me, I would just say, if it's legal custody and mom's still in the picture, we just need to say mom, just go ahead and do the FAFSA with mom in that case, right? I mean, this is where we get into these scenarios, and I would always encourage and welcome y'all to contact me, Felicia, Annie, or any of the outreach team to pose these questions. Annie, I would say stop the recording. I mean, someone else may do the question, but I would say stop the recording.